How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga. Today is Thursday, May 16th. On today's agenda for the show, we're going to start off talking about the NFL schedule release a little bit, my top 10 games I'm looking most forward to in 2024. Then, after that segment, we'll be talking about a new sort of series I wanted to start here, doing a quarterback power rankings for each division. We're going to start with the quarterbacks, and then once we get through each division, we'll move on to another position group. I'll continue that on probably throughout the rest of the offseason as long as it takes me. But plus, on after that, we're going to talk about also Cam Hayward, Pittsburgh Steelers legend, missing the beginning of OTAs. What does that mean for the Steelers? Is it something to take seriously? More details on that later in the show. Stick around and find out. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And before I jump into the top 10, I want to remind you guys, if you have any questions or comments you want to make, use the tip and donations link on your screen, GSMCPodcast.net, with any of those questions. By using that link, your question will pop up on my screen, and that way I can read it on air and get your perspective or just point of view on anything I say or on the topic at hand. It's a massive help for this show. So again, if you would, please use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net, with any of your questions. But with that being said, I can move on now to my list officially of the top 10 games I'm most looking forward to seeing. You can see them on your screen right now. I have the top 10, but I wanted to start with an honorable mention here that didn't fit on the screen. So I will just say to you guys, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Denver Broncos is my honorable mention. It comes earlier, a lot earlier than a few of these games. Pittsburgh will travel to Denver in week 2, and the biggest thing around this matchup is Russell Wilson, the presumed starter for the Steelers, playing against his former team right off the bat in week 2. So you would imagine that those ill feelings are still there between Russ and Sean Payton, and I had it as my honorable mention just because, going into the season, I don't think many people have the Broncos and the Steelers as top contenders, so there's a little bit of a lacking maybe star power from the overall game, but the storyline is very good. I couldn't not mention it, so that is my honorable mention. It should be a very interesting dynamic between Russell Wilson and Sean Payton in that game. But starting from the bottom, I have the Ravens at the Chargers in Week 12, the Harbaugh Bowl, as it's being labeled now. John Harbaugh will travel to his brother's team at the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 12. So hopefully by that time, around this whole narrative with the Ravens and the Chargers, hopefully by Week 12, we get to sort of see the Chargers really hitting their stride. I know heading into this season as well, they're not looked as one of the top contenders compared to the Ravens, but hopefully they find their footing a little bit. They sort of find that identity that they've talked about so much, and by Week 12, hopefully that's a lot closer game than maybe a lot of people will give it credit to right now. But you still have Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Joey Bosa, a bunch of star powers, like I mentioned, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, how the Harbaugh brothers interact and all that stuff. It should make for an entertaining game and some good television as well. So that rounds out my top 10. Then at number 9, we have the Falcons at the Vikings. Week 14, again, another late season game, but Kirk Cousins potentially going to play his former team. Who knows, maybe by week 14, it's Michael Penix's team by then. How that all works out is yet to be determined. But if the storyline continues and Kirk Cousins is playing very well, and also the Vikings are playing very well, we could see Kirk get some revenge on his former team. Maybe J.J. McCarthy's playing as well. That'll be interesting to see. The new young quarterback that came in and essentially replaced Kirk Cousins playing against each other in Minnesota as well. I think the story writes itself, and it should be something to watch. If the Falcons and Vikings are anywhere near the level that people estimate them to be, with Kirk now coming in there with all that young talent, and the Vikings finding the guy at the quarterback position, hopefully these two teams are battling out for some seeding by week 14, just to add more to the level of football we can see. Then moving on to number 8, the Lions at the Cowboys, Week 6. I'm sure a lot of people remember this game. Last year, again, I'm pretty sure it was at the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb went absolutely nuts. It was a weird game, other than just CeeDee Lamb going nuts in the back and forth between the Lions and the Cowboys. Towards the end of the game, did the Lions offensive lineman check in and verify that he was an eligible receiver? The official said that he didn't. He ran up to the officials and said that he said it, but the officials claimed that they never heard it. So, how that all ended, how Dan Campbell repeatedly tried for that 2 point conversion, very stubborn to try and win the game regardless of where they were pushed back. It was a very weird game, and just to get another taste of it this coming year, I think will draw in a lot of people. It should be another game, a close game, just because the Cowboys and the Lions have great players on either side. It should be a close one, and I think if I were to give a prediction, probably the Lions will win this one this time around. But in saying that, we'll move on to number 7, the Jets at the 49ers, the earliest one up until this point, to kick off Monday Night Football. A retry of Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets debut. Last year they had it again on Monday Night Football at home until Aaron Rodgers he didn't destroy the season, but his injury really destroyed the entire New York Jets season. They get a redo of that, this time against the San Francisco 49ers at San Francisco, so not ideal for the New York Jets to travel for their first game across the entire country. But again, you have the star power, young, exciting players. The 49ers trying to get revenge for losing in the Super Bowl. They should be amped up for it. Aaron Rodgers should be amped up for it to come back and play finally for the New York Jets. I think that'll be a great game to watch. Then at number 6, the Ravens at the Texans, Week 17. One of the Christmas Day games. I had it just as a rematch of the AFC Championship, or the AFC Divisional game, excuse me. By Week 16, again, with a lot of these, the biggest point to me and how exciting it can get is just determining seeding and everything like that. You have Lamar against CJ. Stephon Diggs comes over. This time it's in Houston. The Ravens traveling there with all the seeding and Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. It should be a great game on Christmas as well. A debut of Netflix on top of it all should make for some exciting football on that day. And then heading into the top 5, the Lions at the San Francisco 49ers. Again, another rematch of sorts. The Lions playing again in Week 17, against the 49ers. A rematch of the NFC Championship. Again, in San Francisco, the Lions, can they rebound from that bad second half that they had, just completely collapsing against the 49ers, who should be at full strength? Who is in better shape? Who has more momentum heading into the playoffs by this time? How, again, this could affect seeding, I think is something to look out for. And if the Lions can get a revenge match in there and beat the Niners right before they get into the playoffs, that's also a massive thing that could happen and could, affect the psyche a little bit of both teams, knowing that one team beat the other team right before the playoffs. That certainly gives one of them the upper hand, and I'm really looking forward to that one as well. Then the Bills at the Texans, Week 5. This one arguably could have been higher. The Stephon Diggs revenge match, potentially at his new home in Houston, Texans, taking in his former team. A little bit early to see if the Bills really find or have found their footing with their new receivers, with their new identity, with new pieces on the defensive side as well. You don't expect it to be a finished product by Week 5, so that's really the only caveat with this. But, the biggest story is Stephon Diggs. Does he go crazy? I would probably, if I were a betting man, put some money on that to see if Stephon Diggs goes absolutely nuts in that game. They have the talent to do so. CJ Stroud versus Josh Allen. Both of them can win games on their own. It should be a great game, again, for the Houston Texans, in a very tough schedule for the Texans if you haven't looked at their schedule. But that's number 4. Now, heading into the top 3, we have, again, the Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. The week before that Christmas Day game, where both of them will be playing, but not against each other. They play against each other the week before. And one of the most anticipated ones for me, you have the best young quarterback in my estimation in CJ Stroud playing against the best quarterback in the NFL and of this generation. Both teams have a boatload of talent. They're overflowing with star power in that game. And again, by Week 16, how much in stride are they? How much momentum are they carrying? How did the seeding sort of work out heading there close to the end of the season? I think will be very exciting to watch. And if CJ can get the upper hand there in Kansas City, it should write a better storyline heading into the playoffs for both of them. Then quickly, my final last two. The Kansas City Chiefs at the San Francisco 49ers, a rematch of the Super Bowl. A little bit early to see if the 49ers are at full health with Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga as well coming back from injury. So there's a little bit of a subtraction there, but regardless, it's still a Super Bowl rematch, this time in San Francisco. How the 49ers really get amped up for that game, how much better do they look? Their offense, how does it look? Will Brandon Ayuk still be on the team? The Kansas City Chiefs as well got better, but how does the whole situation with Rashee Rice sort of figure itself out? It's still a great matchup of two of the best teams in the NFL. That's why I have it too. And then lastly, week one, a bit controversial, I would say, if I wasn't making this list. The Ravens at the Chiefs week one. You might be thinking, how could the best game all season be in week one? Well, not only do you have the best teams, both of them got extremely better in the offseason. The Chiefs through free agency, through the draft, bringing in another wide receiver, and just building on this big storyline through trying to three-peat and get that third Super Bowl in a row. But also the Ravens trying to get the revenge from the AFC Championship game, bringing in Derrick Henry. And also why it sort of puts it over the top for me is because it is opening week. It is that opening night game, and just that energy, that excitement you get for football finally being back, the first game of the entire season. I think that just gets that added juice that a lot of these other games might not get, depending on where they are in the season. So that is my top 10 list. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments or in the live chat box. Did I miss out a game? Was there a game that you thought should have been higher? Leave all your thoughts down below. But in saying that, I will move on with the rest of the show. I mentioned the quarterback rankings for the NFC North are coming up right after this break, as well as talking about Cam Hayward missing his first OTAs in his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Plus, we'll get into the new defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, Mike Zimmer, and what his new vision is for this Dallas defense heading into 2024. A lot more to talk about on today's show, so stick around. You're watching the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.